In the current year, it's rather easy to take note of people's ideological positions and their intransigent devotion thereto. It's obvious. Things are very political, very politically charged, and we're constantly being fed a stream of political rhetoric and political grievances. And so people develop certain belief systems. And we frequently talk about the notion of an echo chamber. And echo chambers absolutely exist, particularly online, places where people tend to talk about the things they want to talk about exclusively, and there's not a lot of crossover with other belief systems or people who believe otherwise. And it feels good to sit and dwell in an echo chamber because you are presumably sitting there with kindred spirits, like-minded people, or what have you. But one of the consequences of a number of things, the ideological obsession of the current year, but also the very notion of being plugged in online, is that a certain form of latent solipsism has emerged. Now, when I speak of solipsism, I'm not talking about the philosophical belief that the self is the only thing that exists or the self is the only thing that can be recognized. There's a modicum of truth to that, of course. Your consciousness as an individual is cut off from the consciousness of another individual. We are inaccessible to each other on some level. And how we typically try to bridge that gap is by means of human language. It's the only tool we have of which we can avail ourselves. And this is how we communicate the products of our consciousness as individuals, cut off from each other, quite literally trapped in a vat by ourselves. And the way we escape that vat, our best attempt at least, because we never completely escape the vat, is to communicate with other people. And in doing so, we find commonalities, we find differences, we find interests that we might share. And generally speaking, that's good. Of course, one of the consequences of this is that it can lead to ideological rigidity, commitments, and the danger of so-called echo chambers. Now, I don't need to go into the details of why echo chambers are generally bad. It should be self-evident. But the solipsism I'm talking about is not a philosophical commitment, but rather a physical byproduct of the environment that we're living in. Which is to say, yes, there are these ideological commitments that people have. And yes, there are groups and communities online. And yes, there are echo chambers that people dwell in and enjoy being in. But one of the consequences of all this, of being plugged in all the time and having your thoughts fed to you in a sense and redirected outwards and back inwards, is this idea that people are truly trapped in their own heads. And how does this manifest itself? It manifests itself by people, when they encounter other people that are not seemingly of kindred spirit or of like mind, being absolutely floored, shocked, and indeed sometimes repulsed at the idea that someone might apprehend the world in a different way than the individual has. And the reason why this is related to the echo chamber is because the individuals themselves exist in this echo chamber of whichever ideological flavor, color, or type you want to call it, and thus they're not getting external input. And so they begin to apprehend reality itself as a reflection of the echo chambers that they're in as individuals. And when they venture outside of the echo chamber, be it online or in real life, more likely in real life, in fact, what happens, of course, is they are shocked, flabbergasted, and astonished when somebody does not regurgitate the view that they have been accustomed to, and specifically the view that they have themselves as individuals, their sofa that they comfortably sit on, their sofa of ideology. They encounter somebody else, and not only are they in a state of shock, they are absolutely aghast at the prospect that someone might believe something different from what they believe, or that somebody else's worldview is different, whether minimally different, moderately different, or maximally different. And this is something that I would argue is relatively new in its dimensions, which is to say, These things have always existed. These things have always existed because humans have been around for a while, and as long as there have been humans, people have behaved in various ways. But the particular flavor that I'm talking about has only been made possible due to the existence and perseverance of the internet and internet culture. And it goes well beyond the internet because the internet, as we have noticed, has massive consequences in real life too. But this individual, this solipsist light, if you wish to call him such, encounters somebody else of different persuasion and simply cannot comprehend that there is a person out there that might be different. And it's not just they can't comprehend it, they cannot tolerate it. You see, it might be a bit odd, in theory, because back in the day, prior to the internet, you would actually meet a much greater variety of people. You were forced into an environment, for good or for ill, in which you had to deal with people that, frankly speaking, were fundamentally different, moderately different, a little bit different, and sometimes similar. But that variation was a given because the opportunities that arose, whether for social interaction or work-related interaction, were very often dictated by circumstances outside of your control and outside of your immediate agency. What the internet has done has transformed that, and so you become the agent directing your own desires of social interaction. And when you do that, you typically gravitate towards people that you like or that you get along with. And of course, that has ramifications online, but in particular offline. We maybe want to think that the internet has expanded our horizons and enlarged the world that is accessible to us. And in some ways, that's true. I can go on Google and bring up Google Maps and look at a tiny street in the city of Kyoto in Japan, even though I've never been to Kyoto. These are opportunities that have arisen due to the internet. But the flip side of that is our world has become that much smaller. We've become confined, far more so than we used to be, to the premises of our own minds. It leads to a form of alienation which arguably has never existed in the same form as it's taken on today, which is to say, you encounter somebody who's ideologically distinct from you, and you think this person is an actual alien, somebody so foreign and so removed from you that their very existence seems to be phantasmagorical, nigh impossible to you. And beyond that state of shock, there's also the accompanying intolerance, because that line of intolerance is then drawn because the person that this other person has encountered should by definition not exist. There should be no people who think differently from you as an individual, and to the extent that you congregate with others, they all think alike anyway. And these social situations are a reflection of just that, solipsism. Other people become mirror reflections of what you think and what you'd like to think. And when you don't encounter that mirror reflection, you are at once stunned, shocked, surprised, however you want to term it, but also threatened. That is why, ultimately, I believe this hostility has emerged in recent years between people who otherwise might have gotten along in the past. Perhaps not fabulously, perhaps not very well, but they would have tolerated each other. But as we have been riven in twain by these ideological divides, so too have our minds been riven in twain. And it's become nigh impossible to get along with people, because every difference is perceived as a threat because people are living and trapped in their own heads. By its very nature, solipsism does not allow for thought and reflection outside of the self. So these people who've become enamored of themselves and enamored of the mirrors that they hold up to look at themselves in the world, well, of course they would be threatened. Here's the idea. There are certain types of animal species that can recognize themselves in a mirror. Primarily primates, cetaceans, dolphins, and possibly elephants. Of course, human beings are among these animals. And other animals don't, although there seems to be some variability between individuals. So, for example, if you were to plop a mirror in front of a leopard in Africa, which they've done, the leopard thinks that there's another leopard there threatening him. It's alien, it's strange, it's foreign. And so essentially what you've done at the cognitive level with these individuals is when they do encounter other people, you're swapping out their conventional ability to see themselves in the mirror and replacing it with something else that they immediately do not recognize and hence react allergically to. That is the emergence, not just of modern solipsism, that has not existed in its current form or shape. The problem here is you need to be the one willing to bridge the gap. But when you're dealing with the solipsistic nature of so many denizens of the world these days, and they're not just unwilling but incapable of bridging that gap or even wanting to bridge the gap, you really end up being stuck between a rock and a hard place. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you've not yet done so. Hit the like button, share the video. Please hit the bell icon because YouTube does not inform my subscribers of my videos, so hit that bell icon to be notified. And as always, may the gods watch over you. And if I am hale and still alive, I will check you out later. Take care. Bye-bye. If you liked this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you enjoy my content, please consider making a donation or becoming a patron. Thanks for watching.